the Blue Speedster. He's had a rough go of it when it comes to his recent history. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was a commercial disaster on top of a critical one. I mean, I admit I had real fun with it, only because of how many times I laughed from its own insanity. But what's strange about the Sonic franchise is simple. Despite the ups and downs of the series, it continues on with no problems. It doesn't die even after a series of bad games. In fact, even the series' worst games have their staunch defenders, which I don't understand, but to each their own. But now, a new challenger enters the fray. Sonic Forces, released on November 7th, 2017, on the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and Steam for the PC for $39.99. The game attempts to mimic Sonic Generations in the gameplay area, mixing things up between modern Sonic, classic Sonic, and a third hybrid style with your new, very own fan character. Yes, Sonic is embracing his fan community in this game, although surprisingly, you can't change the color of your character's arms. Sorry, Chris Chan, you can't fix the modern Sonic with your own version. Although you can make a pretty good knockoff Knuckles clone. So here's the question. Can Sonic Forces keep up the momentum that Sonic Mania has given the Blue Speedster? Have they learned from the failures of Sonic Boom, focusing on the core gameplay of the series as opposed to going off in every which direction? Or has Sonic tripped over his own 2 feet once again, and thrown himself into a pit of anguish and bad gameplay? That's what I'm here to find out. Let's start this review with literal insanity, the game's story. Because this is a mainline Sonic game, and thus the game story is going to be ridiculous. No kissing human princesses this time, luckily, because we don't have time for that. This is war. That's right, we're at war in the Sonic universe. Eggman, of course, is at the core of this conflict, as him and a mysterious new being called Infinite start the game by actually defeating Sonic for once and taking over the world. From there, the world continued under his iron fist, falling into despair and having Monokuma dance with glee. Okay, obviously Sonic and crew come together to fight the Conqueror, led by, of all peoples, Knuckles? Now, you'd think that someone like Tails would be the one to lead, considering that he's the smart one and Knuckles is the punchy one. But they explain this away early on reasonably. Well, the Tails part anyway. How Knuckles is the leader is still a mystery, and not someone like Silver or Rouge. But no, neither of them are the star of the story here. Hell, Sonic isn't the star of the story. No, you are. That's right, your very own fan character can come to life and be the hero that the Sonic world needs. I'll give Sonic Team this. This is a bold strategy. You're a no-name recruit who somehow survived the initial invasion attempt, and now you're put directly with the series regulars. Isn't it everything you dreamed, Sonic fanfiction writers? Because that's literally what it feels like, a fanfiction. A really, really, really bad written fanfiction. I mean, fanfictions hit a wide variety of things, but this going in the war direction feels like an odd choice to begin with. That's because it doesn't play to several of the strengths of the series' writing, which may sound odd that I use the word strength and Sonic writing in the same sentence. However, I think when the plot doesn't take itself too seriously, things work well in terms of personal relationships and the themes of friendship in the Sonic franchise. And you see glimpses of it here, especially when the series gets self-referential and is a little bit more laid back and jokey.
You worry too much. Look, I'm perfectly fine. It's been generations since I seen you. You okay?
However, that's only here and there. The plot tries to take itself a bit seriously at times, and it turns into C-movie schlock. Yes, I know that the phrase is B-movie, but I don't even want to go that far, because the quality isn't up to that bar. And there's 2 big reasons for that: the length and the pacing. When an issue comes up in the Sonic world in Sonic Forces, things just sort of resolve themselves almost immediately. You know why wrestlers, after hitting a move, don't necessarily always cover their opponent right away? Because they want to let the move sink in, so the crowd can appreciate that move, and then they move on to the cover. The rapid pace of what the plot goes through blazes by any character development, or even allows you to process what's going on before you are thrown into the next issue. Example, Sonic takes 30 seconds to escape from the equivalent of a black hole. 30 seconds. You know, one of the most powerful forces theorized in the whole universe. Maybe making it look like a jobber doesn't sell its strength whatso-all, Sega. Oh, right, gaming fans, not wrestling fans. A jobber is a wrestler whose sole job is to lose to others to make them look good. The more you know. This is where I start to think that the development of Sonic Forces had a bit of issues. It really feels like there were other points and plot in between scenes that were going to be used to build up these moments, but they were cut for a reason I'll get to later on. As to why I think that, it's in the dialogue. There are points where the game references events or things that seem to imply a little bit more that had occurred. It could just be bad writing, I suppose, but it really doesn't feel that way to me. Insane story aside, where the biggest difference from Sonic game to Sonic game is the quality of its gameplay. Because when things go well in the Sonic franchise, it can be some of the most fun action in the world. When it's not, it starts to remind you of Sonic Boom and Sonic 06. Now, Sonic Forces never gets to that horrid quality, but you do sit there going, oh god, please don't get worse, please don't get worse, please for the love of God don't get worse. The gameplay is divided into 4 major types: Avatar levels, Classic Sonic levels, Modern Sonic levels, and boss fights. Granted, there are elements that cross over into each one of them, but they do play a little bit differently in each. Your goal in these stages are simple: get to the end while collecting score and rings and not falling into pits or touching an enemy without a ring to protect you. Simple Sonic gameplay here. Each stage has multiple paths to go down, allowing for some reasonable replayability, as trying to collect all 5 red rings will take multiple attempts. But let's start at more of the base level here, the controls. Something feels a bit too stiff in the controls of Sonic Forces by itself. Sometimes this does feel purposeful though, like in the more restricted behind the shoulder perspective, and using the shoulder buttons with a controller to shift easily back and forth, left and right, in these more speedy sections that you see here. Moving with the stick is purposely limited here to give a sense of speed, and I think it works well in certain cases. Except it leads to one of the first game's problems: its real inconsistency with several of its rules. The changing back and forth between the 3 different playstyles here can seem like a good set of variety, but one of the things that you'll quickly realize is that there are subtle differences in the physics of each character, and I mean real subtle, to the point where there's a small adjustment period to sorta relearn the character. Now luckily, this is something that with enough experience in each character, you'll be able to get through. But in the first half of the game, I found myself struggling at times when I really think I shouldn't have. I mean, I've played a lot of Sonic games. I should be used to this by now. Let me give you an example. I found myself missing a bunch of jumps in the game due to having a lack of momentum at times. While I appreciate that the game punishes you for doing that, something always still felt off in these sections. The initial left and right movement always felt too restrictive, which definitely came into play when you stopped at certain points to recover yourself because you were going a little bit too fast. You'd end up putting yourself in a very difficult scenario, as you wouldn't necessarily have the speed to get yourself out momentum-wise, but the precision of the jump that was asked of you was too high to recover, more than past games of the series. Take this jump right here. I just struggled over and over and over again to get the left and right movement off the jump pad, almost like the game was literally fighting me from moving forward. Now, if I had the momentum, this section becomes easy, and you may say to yourself, Dragnix, that seems fair. Just walk yourself back and gain the momentum that you need. Well, in some cases that can work, but others are definitely not as forgiving, as the momentum needed involves multiple jumps in order to succeed, and well, that ends up being a little bit too much backtracking. The thing you have to realize is that this all comes down to level design. Sonic Mania is the prime example of this working well. Those levels are expertly designed, where if you have the momentum, things can be fantastic, but if you don't, you can still get through it, just a little bit more slowly, not like the struggles that you see in Sonic Forces. Another good example of the inconsistency in the rules are the boss fights. None of them are particularly great per se, although I had fun with some of the early chase boss fights as you pursue the boss and then attempt to ram into them over and over again. In fact, the first one was really fun. And while the game attempted to use that base structure and add variety to it based on the hazards that it threw at you, it didn't do enough to make any one boss stand out in particular, mostly due to the attack portion being the same in those sections. Now, I'll dig more into this in a Design Bite video, but let's take this boss fight here to show a problem with the rules. You attack the boss by hitting him in the head with a homing attack when being thrown into the air when he hits the ground. Okay, that's fine. I get enough height with me being flung up here to get into that range. But what if I jump at the right time and still get that same height? I should be able to attack him, right? Well, no. In fact, I can't at all. The reticule doesn't show up. That makes no sense, and perfectly illustrates the game forcing me into a specific scenario despite getting to the basis of it in a different way. The game wants you to play its way. Now, before I go further, one of the major reasons I think that the Sonic games can be so decisive when it comes to its overall rating and its perception is simple. When your gameplay is firing on all cylinders here, this can be some of the best fun that you can experience. The idea of hitting platforms just for a millisecond, then jumping to the next while keeping up your speed, and thinking that it's your skill that's what keeping the feeling going, yeah, that's when Sonic is at its best. And to be honest, there are a couple of occasions in this game that, yeah, you really do get that feeling. In particular, in these levels. But notice how I said skill there. The game needs to put that challenge out there so that you think it's you who's making Sonic the fastest thing alive. Hell, it doesn't actually need to feel necessarily that challenging. Just challenging enough so that you don't think that you're just holding a button down and the game's just taking you for a ride. Well, that's where certain problems begin with Sonic Forces. Like with the boost mechanic for modern Sonic. Just watch this clip. How much I hold down the button for boost and how I'm really not moving Sonic that much. In fact, not at all really. And look how much I get through this section with an equivalent meter that I started with. Yeah, that's not a challenge. That's just me along for the ride. I mean, here's the prime example of that, the ranking system. Let me show you a couple of failures I had in a level while streaming. Notice the failures and how I make several of the same mistakes here and slow down myself significantly. Now, what would you guess my ranking for the stage was? C? Maybe even a D? Well, let's see what the grade of this level was. Yep, I didn't deserve this ranking, and hence my point. Here's the real kicker about all this. When the game slows down, when the game starts to put a more challenging element on top of you, the gameplay shoots up in quality. That's right, Sonic going slower ends up helping the game. The best example of this is the extra and secret levels, which usually have a gimmick or two that you have to deal with, and the classic Sonic levels. They have speed elements, of course, but they focus more on precision timing, jumping, and almost puzzle-like elements. These bring the challenge to the forefront, and when replaying them, I really felt like the game should have focused more on them. But the flip side of that is that Sonic is known for speed, so the developers are sort of in a no-win situation there. Those wanting to spend a lot of time unlocking as much as they can by searching through all the different levels for the 5 red rings and going down the different paths trying to shave off time here and there, you're going to enjoy this game. I'm serious, if you're willing to put in the hours here, you're going to have fun. This circles back to my point on the game firing on all cylinders. Once you realize the game's missteps and tricks and are able to avoid them, the formula here does work. It just takes way too much effort to get to that point, and there are a couple of things that no matter what the situation is, just don't work overall. Several of these levels are way too short. Look, I want to be fast as Sonic, but when I'm blinking my eyes and the level is seemingly over, yeah, that's too short. In fact, with the game only being 3 hours or so to complete, there's just not enough content to justify the $40 price tag, even if it's $20 off the normal AAA publisher price game. On top of that, you don't have a secondary game mode, like the Chow Garden, to keep you entertained. Well, sorta. I have to admit that the avatar system adds a layer to the game that I had a lot of fun with. Trying to come up with the most ridiculous characters to team with Sonic was cathartic, including the following hideous creations. This is why I shouldn't be given a customization menu. Look at the destruction I have wrought. This is the world savior I have created. With that said though, the unlock rate with items is high, and it's always fun to sit down and make the next ridiculous character. It keeps a really good flow to it. You can also customize the weapon that you use as the avatar. You can turn enemies into cubes, for example, or use your drill to pierce the heavens. Now, at first, you'll wonder why exactly you wanted to change your weapon in the first place from the standard flamethrower, which is immensely powerful and really is quick and able to deal with enemies of all varieties, so why even bother changing? But upon further reflection, the weapons have secondary uses. They can be used to skip certain sections with the right timing. And again, if you want to practice and perfect runs and shave seconds off that time, this game has a bunch to offer. I feel like I've said that a bunch, but the fact is, the game does have an audience. Which leads me to the game's performance. And the game stumbled immediately out of the gate. I wrote about it for TechRaptor. You couldn't even get past the game's 3rd level on the PC. A small crashing issue. Tiny, small, slight. But that was fixed, and I didn't see any problems with crashing after that initial patch. On the frame rate side, it really wasn't a problem for me, but you can see my specs in the description below. I'm running a reasonably powerful machine. Now, I checked this later on as I streamed my entire playthrough to begin with, and given the extra strain, I didn't necessarily focus on it at first. Maybe they put some patches in, but I found a frame rate that hovered around 57 to 60 FPS in the unlocked state. There were occasional dips as you see here, but nothing to the point where it absolutely destroyed the experience for me at least. Bugs, however, are a different story. This game has its share of strange behavior, and it usually has to do everything with timing. If you jump at a point where the game doesn't want you to, you'll end up in... well, you see what's happening here. In fact, that's indicative of the QA experience as a whole. The game does seem to have places where if you jump at the wrong time, it just really doesn't know what to do with you. Whether it's intentional that it throws you to your death or not in these cases, it's inconsistent as well. On some levels it constrains you, others it doesn't. Now with that said, some have really taken advantage of this, and you can see that on the leaderboards. Because while I'm the antithesis of leaderboard chasing myself, the funny thing is about this game, I actually wanted to check to see how fast people were completing some of these levels. I'm pretty sure these leaderboards are actually meaningless now. I mean, Sonic's fast, don't get me wrong, but even he can't score times of 0 seconds. I also noticed that in the game, time-wise, your time does not reset at the start of a checkpoint, even if you're starting the whole level over on a boss fight. What's curious here is that if you hit reset, then the time resets, and the number of retries go to 0. It's sorta strange. As for in-game options, you can choose between 2 difficulties, although play on hard. And some generic game options such as showing game hints or turning on the radio, aka people talking during gameplay, are there. There's also good selections of languages for both voice and text languages. Graphics-wise, you got resolutions from 720p up to 4K, including full-screen borderless windowed mode, full screen, and windowed mode. VSync and monitor selection are here, and you can choose 30, 60, or unlocked frame rate, although good luck getting it over 60. Then you have your typical graphics settings that you can adjust: AA, shadows, AF. Oh, you don't know what AF is? There, that's what it is. I'm not trying to pronounce that, I know I'll butcher it even though I know what it is. Don't worry if you didn't know that though, I had to look up the definition of AF and what it could mean in the graphic settings. Sega, be better with your options descriptions. Hell, maybe put a model environment on the right there to show where the graphics options would look like when you adjust them. As for audio sliders, a good selection here, being able to adjust the sound, music, voice, and the movie volume in particular. Hits all the ones you would ever need. Finally, bindable keys for both the controller and the keyboard. Good job, Sega. Good job. Finally, let's talk about the game's presentation. Like the gameplay, the presentation hits the gambit from, oh hey, that's really lovely to look at, to, oh god, what did they do to you, Sonic? I'm going to start this section by giving Sonic Forces some praise. The UI is clean and lovely. It gives you enough information without being too intrusive. While the black time and score not having backgrounds can be a problem at times with the right kind of background, it's the information that is a tiny bit less important, aka it's the time and the score, as opposed to the rings and the 5 red ring collectibles, which you may need in the middle of a level. The menu design is slick, and it reminds me of Persona 5 in many ways. And that's the last comparison you're gonna have to Persona 5 and Sonic Forces. The game visually looks like all the recent 3D Sonic games. They're colorful, it's got a lot of detail, and it's sometimes too busy for its own good. There's a mixture of the classic green grass stages of the Green Hill Zone to towering metal structures that would make the ADA of Mobius have an aneurysm. Even more impressive here though is the construction of the world. It's an actual world. Take this more industrial level, and notice the green hill in the background here. The game does a wonderful job of connecting each section and the events visually through the use of activity in the background. Eggman's forces terrorizing the city, it's gonna show you that. And it's never to the point of really distracting you away from the gameplay. Well, mostly. I admit I did fall off a ledge or two while staring at something in the background. I mean, let's just pause this clip and look at the detail in this scene. The chain link floor. The discoloration on the metal panels on the columns in both the foreground and the background. The anchor. The individual blue lights on the bottom of the columns. I bet many of you who have played this game probably noticed several of these things for the first time with me pointing them out. And I don't blame you. In a game that doesn't want you to stop and smell the roses, there's a ton of roses to smell. And I just wonder if it was the right choice for the game. What's even crazier about this is that I see signs of things once again missing from the presentation. Take this QuickTime event with this giant snake. I really like how Sonic runs along the length of his body and then gets eaten. It's cinematic, it sells the moment, and somehow gives those Sonic Vor fans something to enjoy. I can't believe I just said that in a review. With that said, let's look at how he gets out of the snake. Does something feel disappointing about that? Like there's really no animation of when he gets out of the snake, it just sorta happens. Now I don't expect him to burst out of the snake's guts or anything, leaving guts all over the screen. This is a game targeted towards the younger demographic. But there had to be something more impactful that they could have done here. That's not the only case either. It feels like effects are just sort of pasted on after they're supposed to happen, as opposed to a gradual application onto a model to show that no, it's not just instantaneous, there was damage done over time, even if that time was a millisecond. As for cutscenes, even though the material they are working with is a little bad at times, they do a great job of keeping the presentation consistent while providing some visual flair. Again, you have some hiccups here too, of course. There's an explosion that I'm thinking of that really looks lame, that I won't show here because of spoilers. But overall, it does a good job of giving you visual eye candy to keep you entertained. Really, there's just some weird applications of the presentation at times, because oh boy, do things get awkward at times. Look, Sonic Team, you see this? This is a bird. Now, there's a ton of bird types out there, and this doesn't apply to all of them. But you know what people don't normally associate with birds' beaks and mouth? A full set of pearly whites. Especially at this position, where it looks so awkward. You know what else people don't do when they're getting explained to? Leave their mouth open like this. Sound-wise, it's a mixed bag. On one hand, you got the iconic jingle of the rings that echo through your headphones and give you a satisfying feeling every time you collect one. On the other hand, you've also got effects that are present, like the grinding of your feet against the ground when using the grappling hook, and they just don't sound that impactful. For every well-done sound here, there's one where the volume level compared to others is just not in the right spot. What should be noted, however, is that this was very dependent on the gameplay type you were experiencing. The Avatar and modern Sonic levels were all over the place, usually on the bad side of the scale, but the classic Sonic levels, they were done really well. It's obvious that they tried to mimic the old style of the Genesis games, and the audio really works in these sections with things like the homing attack and the bounce off the launch pads. I wish the game was overall more consistent here, but take a listen and hear it for yourself. As for voice acting, you're getting what you should expect out of the Sonic series. Okay voice acting that's iconic thanks to the voice actors staying with the project over time. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, all the mainstays of the series do a reasonable job of presenting their characters consistently with the rest of the series, even if the characters are oddly written at times and can have weird inflections of their voice. But those inflections to me are not miscues. They are usually consistent with the history of that character in the franchise. In addition, it sucks that the Avatar doesn't have a voice actor with him, but I do like Infinite's voice actor, who does a great job with the material he was given. And of course there was Eggman, who, let's be honest, is one of the best bumbling yet nefarious villain voices of this generation. One voice that stands out though, Rouge. I understand the actress has been voicing Rouge since Sonic Generations, and she's a talented actress, having done Fi in Zero Time Dilemma and Aegis in Persona 3, and I probably mispronounced that. But she doesn't sound like a confident, sexy thief here. She sounds bad. Like, I really want the old actress back here. Just listen and hear what I'm talking about.
We've got an intruder. Shadow has entered the facility. Defense Squad Jackal has already been completely annihilated. All available troops, intercept that blasted hedgehog by any means necessary! I went to great pains to get the best mercenaries around, and he still totally wrecked the defense squad. Shadow!
Should have hired some defense squads for the defense squad. Doctor?
Sonic? You're alive! Wait, what? Oh, you're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you? Right, that makes sense, I think. Do you know how you got here? Maybe the power that Eggman is using is somehow affecting other dimensions. Which might work to our advantage. I mean, everything happens for a reason, right?
There's a large-scale troop presence. Suspiciously large for a place with no strategic value.
I can't imagine the doctor would do something like that without reason.
No kidding. And there's a rumor going around that old rotten Eggman has been developing some kind of new weapon. So...
Yeah. Looks like this won't be your garden variety recon mission.
do it to it, Shadow. Omega went on ahead of you, so you can link up with him on site.
I'm more than enough on my own. I'll handle things my way.
Omega said the same thing. You two go together like chili and hot dogs.
Cut the chatter. I'm on my way.
So yeah, let's talk about the music last. This is going to be a decisive one, because I will give Sonic Team this. They went all in on the music. They didn't just take a bunch of generic tracks and hope for the best. It's crafted for the game. When the game takes inspiration from the older games in the series, for example, you get some really good pieces with some really good rhythm that complements the gameplay. It feels consistent with the series, and honestly, it's something I could listen to for ages. At least for some of these pieces. But then, then there's the other pieces. Specifically, the vocal pieces. Look, Sonic Team, everybody remembers Escape from the City. They adore it. I adore it. It's on my phone. With that said, it seems like you tried to capture that magic here by adding lyric pieces left and right, talking about the level that you're going through. And it's freaking hilarious, because while it may explain the strength of friendship, or even talk about the level you're running through, it's so goddamn cringy. I mean, even the better vocal tracks feel so awkward at times that I sat there going, what the hell am I listening to? To be short, it's a train wreck that you can't look away from. Not to say that some pieces here don't have talent to them. Hell, Hoobastank did a piece for the game. But man, the material is just... You know what? Just listen to hear what I'm talking about, okay?
Show the world what we can do. You are next to me and I'm next to you. Pushing on through until the battle's won. No one's gonna get something to us. Into each other we put our trust. Standing united after the fight. It's a brand new day. We have turned the page. Never knew how much I needed somebody to help me this way. Here comes the enemy, strike them down. We can't let evil win, take them out. This is justice, this is what's right. Here comes the enemy, mess them up. And bring them to the knees, do your stuff. Time for justice, time to go fight.
In the end, I had fun with Sonic Forces. I truly did. Granted, I had more fun laughing at the game and the ridiculous scenarios than actually playing the game at times. But you do see these occasional glimpses of what made Sonic Adventure 2 so beloved in the 3D versions of the Sonic franchise. The problem here though is simple, that it's too occasional. The short levels plus the lack of challenge at times really hurts the game. In addition, the game has a speed problem, as in it goes too fast in certain places, hurting the pacing overall and making you wonder where half the story went. It doesn't help the game can be beaten in 3 hours or so, although there is some replayability here. With all that taken into account, Sonic Forces ends up tripping and skidding along the ground in a bit of pain, but somehow still comes in at a 65 out of 100. That means it's a game to target when it's on sale, even with the $40 price tag, but nothing more. However, that doesn't take into account my enhancer system. Today's games hit a wide gambit of types and for a variety of tastes out there. And while my standard score tries to be as objective as possible, I use the enhancer system to account for more subjective elements of games. So, if you fall into one of these enhancers, then add or subtract that score to the base score. If your new score's first digit changes, then refer to the description below to find out where the game falls into your new buyability rating. Coming up next on the channel, game design videos. I promised you a couple, and there are a couple coming. One on Bubsy, one on Zelda, and I am working on a Hand of Fate 2 game review / first impressions. And I want to mention that I will start regularly streaming on Twitch more going forward, probably 2 to 3 times a week. The reason for this is simple. I am preparing for the end of the year videos by doing some research on games that people overlooked during the year. I may not be able to get to all of them in terms of a formal review, but at least I can provide you guys some kind of feedback in terms of the games that I'm looking at. Some of them will be hits, some of them will be misses. But hey, this allows me to be a little bit more interactive with you guys and to see the process of me looking at a game. I'll be posting the streaming schedule on the Google Calendar, which is in the description below. Anyway, this is Dragnix signing out, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, keep on gaming.